Good morning to all of you. I just wanted to make a short video that we're going to place on the Diocesan YouTube channel that covers some of the major information that we talked about with regards to explaining to parents at parent meetings at the start of a CCD cycle who have confirmandi and people that are going to be confirmands for this upcoming cycle of confirmation. Some of the changes that were made in the diocese and why. I thought this information might be helpful for any DRE or catechist or person working in a confirmation formation program or coordinator within a parish who wasn't able to come to the DRE meeting that we had a few weeks back. And I wanted to just give some tips on where you could go to find some useful resources to help communicate this to the parents of kids who are receiving confirmation, regardless of whether you're actually using the 3.5-year gradual move to 8th grade in your parish, or you're doing all of your confirmandi and confirmands that are ranging from the ages of 9th through 11th grade this year to be confirmed. So around the spring of 2023, when Bishop Desautel first made the formal announcement that he was moving confirmation during the season of Easter and around the time of Pentecost, he sent out a letter that you see in the upper left-hand corner here. It's dated April 27, 2023, to all the pastors of parishes. And in that letter, he asked them on the Feast of Pentecost to speak a little bit about the sacrament of confirmation, maybe give a little explanation from the pulpit about the reasoning behind why he decided to make that decision. And he asked that a very short formal video of that announcement be played for the parishioners. If you don't have access to it directly online, you can find access to that video on the diocesan webpage at the Office of Catechetics homepage on the diocesan website. And if you scroll over the top part of the website where it has offices, there's usually a drop-down box that comes down and you pick catechetics. And when you land on our homepage and you scroll down the page, you're going to see it's the first video on our diocesan webpage. It is located on Vimeo, and I know that some people in their facilities at their parishes don't have internet connection in a parish hall. So if you can't stream it during a parent meeting to play for them, and you're interested in using this video and your pastor didn't use it when Bishop asked him to speak about this in April, you click on the little link on the video where it says Vimeo, and it'll actually bring you to the Vimeo page where the video is located. You can actually download the video from there as a file that you could place on your desktop, and you could play it without internet in the desktop in a presentation in a hall where you don't have an internet connection, as long as you have an overhead projector, a computer, and some sound so they can hear what the bishop is saying. He also recommended in that same letter, for possible use when you're making this announcement to parents, the video that's right below it, which you can see here. And it's a married couple that lives in the Lafayette area now around Brobridge. And they had once lived in Texas, and they moved back, and they had a couple of different kids at different ages. Some of their older children have already received the sacrament of confirmation in a diocese in Texas around the time that we were formally doing it, close to 11th grade, and talking about why they were so excited that they have younger children now entering into junior high and 8th grade that will have the opportunity in the next 3 years or so to receive the sacrament earlier in life when they really are desiring it. This video also gives a lot of the reasons why the move was made, not just the bishop's initial things he mentioned in the letter or his video, but some theological, some cultural, and practical reasons that were behind his decision in moving confirmation. And if you scroll down below it, you'll see that there is a decree to pastors and DREs, which is the official decree that the bishop made announcing confirmation and the move to 8th grade. Right below that is the personal curriculum that he developed and would like to see every confirmandi be exposed to before they're presented for the sacrament of confirmation. And then the next thing underneath that is a letterhead to pastors and DREs, which are talking points to share with parents who have questions about why this was done. Those three are PDFs you can download directly from the website and have access to and print out and either put in a bulletin or put in the hand of a parent and picking the talking points from them that you want to go through in your meeting. Many of these talking points are hit on in the video, but some of them are not expanded on in the video the way they are in the handout. In the PDF document, I sent this out in an email not long after the bishop made his announcement and issued the letter that was on the previous slide. And you can see for some theological reasons, one that I pointed out in the meeting that I thought was really important is it comes from the 1992 Catechism of the Catholic Church in paragraph 1308. And it's a subsection of that paragraph. And it talks about Christian maturity, because a lot of people are worried that these kids are not mature enough to receive the sacrament. But the truth is that according to a doctor of the church, St. Thomas Aquinas, somebody who made a theological contribution that's just as relevant now as it was in the time when they were alive, he talks about how we should not measure the age of someone's spiritual maturity solely on their biological maturity. For as the Book of Wisdom says, for old age is not honored for length of time or measured by number of years. Many children, through the strength of the Holy Spirit that they have received, referring here to the sacrament of confirmation, have bravely fought for Christ, even to the shedding of blood. And one of the things I like to mention too is the three seers from the vision at Fatima. Two of them are saints, and they were very young when they received those visions from Our Lady, and they lived out a great life of mortification, a great life of penance for the sake of poor sinners. And this is a very spiritually mature thing to do. And these young kids were very young. So it is possible to be mature enough and ready to receive the sacrament at this time in your life. For practical reasons, there are four main things that people cite between the ages of 18 and 40 why they're leaving the Catholic Church. And I've mentioned them in previous videos, and they're mentioned in the video that I posted from the couple. And I've talked about them several times. But when we're talking about things that most catechetical materials don't really lay out, but assume that the person that is receiving the information from the catechetical materials already accept as presuppositions to belief in God, the compatibility of faith and science, the understanding of redemptive suffering, and even why in our human nature, the church teaches things about chastity and about proper and ordered use of sexuality. Why those things are difficult to receive is because they're in a time period of their life between 5th grade and 11th grade, where they maybe have formed a habitual life of sin, and they're conditioned by that sin. And now we're trying to pull them back in and teach them about things that would have been much more easy for them to receive had they been in the proper disposition and had those gifts already working in them before they developed that life of habitual sin. And I taught junior high for a long time before I moved into teaching high school. And even though it was a tougher age to teach because it's just a tough period in people's lives, going through puberty and maturing, it was a ripe age where they could still be formed and they could still receive in a good disposition, I think, the 7 gifts of the sacrament of confirmation that would prepare them to receive those teachings in high school in a much more fruitful way. So that was one of the reasons that the bishop chose to move confirmation to 8th grade, to give them those 7 gifts working in their lives sooner than later. And then for cultural reasons, sociologically, it's been proven that a lot of 13-year-olds are looking for community. And if they find a community outside of their parish, by the time we get them back at 16 or 17, even if they've been absent from CCD classes for a while, they've already found their community somewhere else. And it's very hard to break that trend in that community in their life and bring them back to the parish. So if they form that earlier on in the parish, that we can keep them in that community moving forward. And then probably one of the most controversial, but the most practical reasons is just the nature of the understanding of God that most people have. Christian Smith, a sociologist who did a great study talking about how the most influential thing on a kid staying Catholic post-confirmation is their parents and the way that the faith is prioritized in the home, rather than no matter how good a priest they have, or a youth minister, or a religion teacher at a Catholic school, or maybe even a youth coordinator at a church, the disposition that they are in to receive the sacrament really comes from how it's prioritized at the home. And a lot of people in the home today that are bringing kids to CCD classes, I think as adults have the same mentality that the kids do. They have a false understanding of the nature of God. They're looking for some psychological support system for their child whenever their child's going through something difficult. They have a deistic understanding of God. They think God is kind of like a watchmaker who created the watch, but then steps out and doesn't want to have any interpersonal action in the life of the individual that he has created. And he's only there when he's needed. And they make requests to him kind of like a vending machine. And when you put your order in, you get what you asked for. And after that, God is not really useful in your life. And the definition for this is moralistic therapeutic deism. And there are a couple of articles that I included here that I thought would be very beneficial for parents to read, because I think a lot of them are kind of stuck in that understanding of the faith. And a lot of them have had broken situations in their lives where they don't realize that the church really has answers for them. And it's really important for them to journey with their children and to be able to be given a tool that's put in their hand that allows them to have difficult conversations with their children about things that they want to talk to them about, but they don't feel qualified or are comfortable to be able to have. And if we're providing those kinds of things for them in parishes, they're going to associate that need being met by the parish, and they're going to want to stay in that community. And then they're going to discover Jesus Christ and meet him in an intimate way. People have been sacramentalized or given the sacraments, but they don't necessarily have ever had an actual conversion to Christ. I know for me, for a long time in my life, that was part of the issue. I knew a lot about Jesus, but I didn't know him personally. And it took a cross in my life, a tragedy for that to happen. And I think that a lot of people are going through a lot of little tragedies right now, and they don't realize the place to go to get those answers is the church. There's another video that we just finished producing, same couple, and they were talking about some real practical ways to address the domestic church. What is the domestic church? What is it? What is it actually? What is its purpose? Why did we implement TOB in our diocesan structure of grade level expectations? Why learning about the dignity of the human person and implementing the teachings of theology of the body in a married life of a couple in the domestic church really enhances both a man and a woman's ability to live out their participation in the common priesthood of Jesus Christ, where we, as the common priesthood of our baptism, we sanctify, we teach, and we govern. But we first must allow Christ to do those things within each of us as a husband and as a wife in the domestic church, in a properly ordered role in the home, to be able to do that for our kids. So this movie, or this little video, goes about 17 minutes, and it's accessible now online. It's got about 300 views, one of the most viewed videos on the Dawson YouTube page that's been recently posted. And I would encourage you to use this as well, maybe in a separate meeting with your parents, in order to help them understand this idea when you're trying to get them involved in this process and re-engage them in their faith, because parents tend to invest in things they are invested in. And if they're invested in their faith, they're going to invest that investment in their children. And we just got to give them a helping hand, not usurp their authority to do that, but to aid them in that process. And I think the dynamic shift we're moving to in the diocese is to try to help them to realize that we're there to aid them in that process and not replace them in that process, and help them be confident and that we're invested in them because we know Jesus is, and we want them to be invested in Christ because we know Christ is invested in them. We did a survey, and we have obtained information about from most of the parishes who are actually doing this over the 3.5-year process or doing it all at once. I'll just make one point about this. The 3.5-year process was really designed so that there wouldn't be a rush, and that people that were working in confirmation and junior high formation right now could take an honest look over the next 3.5 years about what are we doing now? How do we adjust what we're doing now to do it in junior high, while kind of simultaneously trying to figure out what is that mystagogy stage, that post-confirmation stage, that ongoing formation stage for every Catholic who has now been given the grace of the sacrament to enter into adult life, into the faith. What does that look like for them? What kind of programs could we use? What kind of tools could we use with the right people in place with this process that focuses on adults to give them the tools they need? And of course, if the sacrament does what we believe it does, then a 14-year-old who's received it shouldn't be viewed as a youth anymore. It should be viewed as somebody who's growing into adulthood in the faith and included with other adults. And it's also a blueprint that Kyle will talk about in a future video about what to do practically to prepare them in a pre-evangelization stage, much like the pre-catechumenate stage, what an encounter phase would look like in the catechumenate phase of an RCIA candidate, what the purification and enlightenment stage looks like with actual catechesis before receiving the sacrament of confirmation, and then what a mystagogy stage looks like post that for an ongoing formation for an adult. And if you're moving everything all at once right now, then this particular thing that we put together, this suggested blueprint of how to follow, will be something you can use to help make that transition as smooth as possible for you and your parish. One of the things I noticed in the diocese is that after interviewing over 80 priests over the past 3 years and then having to stop because of COVID, and now trying to re-engage with some newly installed pastors and parishes and their DREs and finding out what is your goal for catechesis, how can we help you achieve it? We have better resources today than in any time in the post-conciliar period of the church after the Second Vatican Council, as far as catechetical materials are available to us. The problem is not the information that we have to transmit. The problem is that the people that we're trying to transmit it to are not really ready to receive it. They're not in the seeking stage. They're more in a trust and openness and possibly curiosity stage of the faith, even though they're fully initiated Christians through the sacraments. because if they were not in the right disposition when they received it and never have reconciled themselves with God, those gifts are laying dormant in their soul. So I think we have an evangelization issue. And what we're trying to hit with this is a way to re-evangelize adults, which most post-Vatican II catechetical documents, including Catechesis Tradendae, one that's put out by Pope St. John Paul II, and probably the most recent and most effective magisterial document on catechesis, speaks about targeting adults. And this is what we need to move to in parishes, where the whole family is our student, not just our student, and that we're teaching adults more frequently than we are children, so that the adults feel comfortable in handing on the faith to their kids. And then the last thing I want to talk about is this mentality of the people in front of us. As a former teacher, when I first started in 2001, and when I got out of the classroom in 2018 and took this job at the Chancery, the audience that was in front of me had changed quite a bit. The way they received information changed. I had to make myself aware of where my audience was and work on how I could formulate the way I was transmitting information to them in a way they would be willing to receive it. This book, From Christendom to Apostolic Mission, is a fantastic resource to read, and I think it sums up in a pretty broad but general way what's really going on. And for a long time in the history of the church, we were in a period of Christendom, where it was very obvious that it was subconsciously implanted in our mind that the material world pointed to something that was immaterial. So it made the sacraments have a lot of meaning, and the efficaciousness of the sacraments being a visible sign of the efficacious grace it actually transmits to us, plausible for most people. We're not in Christendom anymore. We're actually outside of that, and we're more in a pre-apostolic age. And one of the problems, especially with American Catholics, is I think this is something that's actually denounced in the book and talked about and kind of forgotten because it's a preconciliar document, and most theological formations that people get today focus more on post-conciliar stuff than preconciliar stuff. But if you read a preconciliar document from a previous pope, it can be pretty enlightening. And I listed in a set of notes I gave out of the meeting that I can attach some way, shape, or form, or get you access to if you email me for, the idea of what Pope Leo XIII condemned as a heresy called Americanism. And I just took this small quote from the book and talked about it. Even as we love our country and hope it prospers beyond its borders, it is in no sense the hope of the world. The United States is not the hope of the world. The hope of the world is Jesus Christ alone, working through his mystical body, the church. The Blessed Mother was immaculately conceived, not the American Republic. It's a very Protestant notion to understand the New Jerusalem as the United States. Most of that was from some of the Puritans that came over after the English Reformation in England, and then the migration to the New World in the 13 colonies. That's not an authentic, universal, historical Catholic understanding of things. And sometimes, very slowly, our Catholicism has been influenced by Protestantism. And we can see that tendency in a lot of American Catholics today. And I think that's an obstacle to actually evangelizing them well, even though they've been fully initiated. And then the last thing is that we're in this apostolic age where the idea of the transcendent is gone, where the natural world points to something beyond itself. All there is the natural world. Formal and final causality in metaphysics has been eliminated. So all you have is efficient and material causes. And that's a very materialistic and utilitarian worldview and understanding of the world. And we think that if we have really smart people with really good ideas, we can just let them have these ideas and we can fix all the problems in society on our own. So in our very nature, man believes he can reach his final end, which is perfection, and he wrongly believes his perfection is himself in creation rather than God himself, without sanctifying grace. This is the very opposite worldview of Catholicism. Catholicism teaches that we are in a fallen state in our nature and that we cannot reach our final end in the beatific vision in heaven with God without the sacraments, without the sanctifying grace that comes from them. I think that disconnect with the people in front of us needs to be made reconnected so that we can be successful in handing on the Catholic faith from one generation of Catholics in this newly formed and conformed domestic church to Jesus Christ, to all the members of it inside the home. And then we can take what we do inside the home and we can transmit it to people outside of the home. Please know of our prayers for you and this journey, and the Office of Catechetics is here to answer any questions you may have. And we're more than willing to come sit down with you and your pastor and unpack this in a greater way in a future time that's convenient for you. God bless you.